You got a short one?
Yeah, I do.
I mean a question?
Saved the best question for last. Trust me, this one's good. But first, I'll break the ice. Many people have stated no icebreaker. You want me to get right into the real question?
I want you to get right into the question. All right.
So this question is about hypercritical thinking.
Yep.
Now, everyone knows that critical thinking is a great thing to develop. You have to be able to, I guess, think about your ideas. So if information is presented to you, you have to decide if it's legitimate or if there's some sort of deceit behind it. But when it's taken to its extreme, no matter how great or noble somebody is, you can always find a crack in the armor and try to figure out how they're covering up something that's not great about them, you know? And you might then discredit everything they do as just a facade.
Okay, so let me stop you there for a sec, because I want to address two of the issues that you already brought up. So there's the issue of hypercritical thinking, partly in relationship to yourself and partly in relationship to others. So I'd like to address the issue with regards to yourself to begin with. So there's this idea that Carl Jung developed. He extracted it, I don't know from where, from some ancient writings that he was familiar with. I believe they were Jewish writings. He said that, classically speaking, traditionally speaking, God was viewed to rule being with two hands, the right hand and the left hand, and the right hand was justice, and that was you're going to get what's coming to you. But the left hand was mercy. And the idea essentially was that the cosmos could not exist without the proper combination of justice and mercy. You should get what's coming to you. But people are fallible and they make mistakes. And so it's reasonable to apply that to yourself. You know, there's an idea that's been developed by psychologists over the last few decades that people are basically narcissistic and that they generally feel that they're better at most things than other people. I don't buy that. I don't think the experimental evidence for that is very strong, and I certainly haven't seen that, for example, in my clinical practice, where I've seen that people are generally far harder on themselves than they are on other people. One example of that, I've written about this in my new book too, is that, you know, if you have a pet that's sick and you take it to the vet and you get medication, you're very likely to give the pet the entire course of medication, to go to the pharmacy to get the prescription filled, to give the pet the medication, to follow it through. But if you are the person who has the problem, yeah, you all laugh because you know the story. It's like a third of you won't even go fill the prescription, and of the remaining 2/3 of you, half won't take it to completion. And you think, well, why are people like that? And I think it's because they know themselves, they have contempt for themselves because of their flaws, and then they come to despise themselves. And I think that's a big mistake. That's too much justice and not enough mercy. And you know, Jung wrote about the biblical injunction that you should treat your neighbor as if he were yourself, essentially. But he talked about that as an equation, which was quite interesting. So, because it's often read as something like you should be nice to people, which is not what it means at all. Because first, nice is a very low-end virtue, but it isn't what it means. What it means is that you should treat your neighbor as if he or she is someone that you wish to encourage and develop, but that you should also have exactly the same attitude towards yourself, which is sort of in some sense regardless of what your opinion is of yourself. Critical, let's say, hypercritical even, which is often the case with people who are anxious or perhaps who are hyperconscientious. You have to put forward to yourself the same sympathy, we could say, that you would extend to someone else that you cared for. That's the thing, is that you have to come to treat yourself as if you're someone that you care for. And I mean that technically. You know, you detach yourself from yourself and you think, okay, well, if I was going to construct a mode of being that was optimal for this person that I happen to be, what would that look like? And that's sort of independent of whether or not you think you deserve it. It's like, maybe you deserve it and maybe you don't. Innocent until proven guilty, that's a pretty good policy. But you should come to lay out a mode of being for yourself that gives you some credit, you know, and that will also help you in your dealings with other people. But it's often very difficult for people to do that to themselves. Okay, so that's the first part of that.